gentlemen of the WWE Universe, Vince, John, Sunday night, say goodbye to the WWE title. Say goodbye to John Cena. And say goodbye to CM Punk.
Welcome to Last Match Standing, the podcast where we review, relive, and rank the 100 greatest wrestling matches of all time. As always, I'm Spencer.
I'm CM Punk the movie.
And I'm WWE Ice Cream Bars.
And today, it's Season 3.
Oh my gosh, how do we get here?
Season 3, Episode 1. Can you see the smile on my face?
Listen,
Can you see
it's
the smile on
big,
my face?
it's wide, we're ready to go. Are you guys pumped about this?
Oh, yeah.
It's been a while, hasn't it? We actually took a break this time.
we did.
It's weird when you do that and you feel like creatively like rejuvenated after about 3 weeks.
Yeah, so you guys must be ready to do all of Season 3 tonight, right?
Yes,
all 20 episodes?
That was
Should
the
we
plan.
go for it?
That was the plan.
Okay.
We're going to do a 12-hour recording session, and that way we can take like a year off and just record like the intro and the outro.
Well, the problem is that we've picked a match here for the Season 3 premiere that might be 12 hours on its own. So that's the problem, I think. But, before we get into our Season 3 premiere and the awesome match that we've chosen, that is one that has been recommended by so many of our listeners, we want to say a couple of things. First of all, thanks to anyone who listened to our Season 2 finale and has joined us along for the ride between Seasons 1, 2, and now into 3, so thank you so much for that. But a couple of other things to say, too. One of them is I am not as smart as many of you think I am. So, from time to time, we do trivia challenges, and I don't always win.
Do tell.
It's something that I've noticed, and it's not, listen, I'm working on it. But I've gotten a little bit of a habit here of being on the losing end of these trivia challenges.
How does it feel? How's your back feeling?
It's still pretty tight. The neck brace just came off. If you don't know what we're talking about, our patrons voted that a punishment of mine for losing a trivia challenge was to get choke slammed. And although I am not the best seller in terms of the choking, the slam was legit. And if you want to see what we're talking about, you can head over to youtube.com/lastmatchstanding and find that there, the choke slam. You'll notice an evil Landon and and someone that may be Paul. I'm not even sure. But definitely head over to YouTube, and hopefully there will be more of that kind of stuff headed your guys' way. It's going to be really, really fun. In addition to that, like I said, I've made it a bit of a habit that I've lost these trivia challenges, so there might have been another one that I may have also lost. So if you are a wonderful patron, a Slammy Award winner, or whatever patron you are, first of all, thanks. Secondly, you're going to have to head on over to Patreon and vote on what you'd like to see my next punishment to be. If it's up to me, Paul and Landon will have nothing to do with it.
I just love how this trivia that I lost was before we were doing punishments. So I've evaded them so far.
Yeah, and you haven't even lost since then.
I would
I haven't.
is there a retroactive? Can we do a retroactive punishment?
I think that may be something.
I think that's going to be one of the options on the poll.
There was
punish me or punish Paul.
As I recall, there was talks of me doing was it the Scott Steiner math promo? But like you and I have done it in its entirety, like 3 times on the show so far. So I think somebody. I think it was Podcast Hitman said I should do the Super Brawl Saturday promo.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then somebody was like, "Oh, you should do the Zandig promo."
Oh, we're just gonna do it for fun.
Yeah, it's not even.
And I'm like, I will do
it.
those like on my own, like in the backyard, just because they're funny.
That's fantastic. So YouTube.com, obviously, our Last Match Standing YouTube channel. Totally go there. We've got all sorts of really, really awesome things coming up on the Patreon as well. So if you want to subscribe to Patreon, there's really, really cool stuff there, including the first 10 WrestleManias in Last Mania Standing that we've dropped. So really, really fun stuff. The ranking system is a little bit different. But all that to say, let's hone in on Season 3. We are coming at you. In case you haven't seen our Twitter over the last week or two.
Yeah, we've been dropping a few hints.
A few. We're going to come to you live from July 17th, 2011 from the All-State Arena in Chicago, Illinois.
The night CM Punk's contract expires.
That's absolutely right. And CM Punk challenges for the WWE Championship against John Cena. And oh, by the way, if John Cena doesn't win, he's out of here.
This match is so important because, okay, think of it. 2011, WWE was in a serious hole, right?
Yeah,
Edge had to retire, and their two top guys already had the big belts. So they sort of painted themselves into a corner. It was stale. Where were they going to go? The fans needed someone to believe in. They needed something fresh to sink their teeth into. Enter CM Punk.
Well, to piggyback off what you just said, as stale as it was, I tapped out. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. That's like the second time in a decade. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not into wrestling anymore. And as I recall, you called me on a Monday night, said, dude, turn on Raw right now. I'm like, why? Just do it. And I caught like the second half of the promo, and I'm like, what's going on?
Well, that's the thing. You say the promo, and obviously we're talking about the pipe bomb, but
yeah,
there are a series of epic promos, and we're going to deep dive into them because there's just so much meat to talk about there. Mm-hmm. And but there was a series of promos, Paul, and you could have watched any of those, and that would have gotten anybody back into wrestling.
Well, the reason why, and I know everybody's talked about it before, we have to talk about that one, is because like the next day, like Jim Rome was talking about professional wrestling. It was like the talk of all the legit sports networks. Like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, oh, it's complete anarchy. People are like breaking the script. They're going against what's going on? That's so interesting. Like, when's the last time in our lifetime that wrestling has been that interesting? Even if it's only for like a few months.
So, Punk leading into this storyline. Do you remember what was going on with Punk at the time?
The New Nexus.
He was literally the leader of the New Nexus. I didn't even remember the New Nexus, January 2011. It blows my mind to think about how far he came and all of the different things they tried with him. And this is the one that just stuck, right?
Well, I think it's really interesting because, you know, CM Punk at this point has won the World Heavyweight Championship three times.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Three times at this point because he's
times.
cashed in Money in the Bank twice. But he never got over that hill. Like, he never reached it up to this point. He was never treated as the top guy. And this is something that, to be fair, doesn't really happen even after this. But
no.
But you know, and it's what caused issues. And Paul, have you seen the Best in the World documentary?
Oh yeah, I love the documentary.
I thought you had, yeah. So
but it's funny, like you watch him talk about, oh yeah, man, it's great. I'm on top now, and I'm the number one guy, and you can kind of see in his eyes, like, no, I'm not. I'm popular, but like I'm still not the face of the company.
Right. So he does all these things where, you know, the New Nexus, like, who cares? He does the Straight Edge Society for a bit before that, and that was good until it wasn't, which wasn't his fault.
They just they shit canned it. They fired everybody. Like, all right, well, it's your fault. Like, it's my fault that you fired my entire stable. Okay.
Right. So we go almost a year before this happens, before Money in the Bank 2011. CM Punk says that he was fed up. He said, fed up is an understatement. I was tired. I was sick. I was mad. I was feeling depressed. I was upset, crabby. Probably wasn't too much fun to be around. Just literally crossing off days on a calendar and counting minutes. And he's talking about until his contract expired because he was ready to be out of there. And that's what makes this build, that makes this match so memorable, because how often do we say it? Wrestling, not just WWE, wrestling sometimes is at its best when it blurs the lines between reality and kayfabe, so to speak. And I'm not sure that there's a promo or a build or a match on our list that does that more than this one right here.
Well, that's because you talk about blurring lines, but the lines are almost just gone here.
Yeah.
At some points. And another thing we talk about is circular storytelling, but also that history repeats itself, right?
Yeah.
We talked about in a previous episode the original Summer of Punk, but in 2005, where he signed the WWE contract on the ROH title. Do you see some similarities here to how they built up this storyline?
They basically just did it again.
They basically did it again. But would you argue that this was done better? Maybe
Yes,
on a bigger
It's
stage.
on a bigger.
I would.
It's on a bigger stage, and I mean, I don't know. Like going back and doing the research for this match and watching the Raws leading up to it and all that stuff. Like, there's so much that I had forgotten in terms of really good stuff on the mic. Besides the pipe bomb from CM Punk, but also John Cena, Vince McMahon. Like, they play pretty decent roles in this.
Oh yeah, they did.
And it's part of why CM Punk John Cena becomes such a good feud for the rest of the year, because they play off of each other so well. So, is it better than in Ring of Honor? I don't know. It feels more real almost in the WWE in this regard.
I think the reason why it felt more real is because a lot of the things he was saying was how he was actually feeling at the time. He wanted to be out of the company, so he was like, "My contract's up in 5 weeks. I'm going to say whatever the hell I want."
Yeah, I'm not sure he felt the disdain for Ring of Honor when he left that he did for WWE.
No,
when
he definitely
was
I don't
trying
think he
to,
did.
and I think that might be the biggest difference between the two.
Yeah, it's like this time he legit like, "Fuck this place, I'm out of here." So I'm gonna go, you give me a live mic, I'm gonna say what I want to say.
So June 13th, 2011 is technically, I guess, where I would pinpoint as the start of this feud. Does anybody remember what happened on June 13th?
I would agree with that. June 13th was Stone Cold Steve Austin was on Monday Night Raw that night. I think he might have been the guest host for Monday Night Raw.
Oh, the good old days.
The guest host. Listen, the guest host phase gave us Bob Barker, and that's all I care
did.
about.
But
So
it
the Price is
also-
Raw. Listen, it was worth it.
Also
Just
gave us Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. I don't even know who those two people are, and they apparently don't know who Kofi Kingston is. They called him Kobe Johnson.
Oh, God.
Okay, the guest host phase was trash, but I loved Price is Raw, and I will never forget it.
Well, that was great.
But Stone Cold was there, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, well, I was referring to CM Punk versus John Cena
Yeah,
on Raw.
yeah.
This was a non-title match, which shouldn't be a thing. But CM Punk wins that match, even though R-Truth was the number one contender going into Capital Punishment.
Oh, that's right. I forgot Truth main evented Capital Punishment.
Was that All-Star Night, as in WWE All-Stars, the game? I'm pretty sure that was All-Stars.
Oh, God.
I'm just saying.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, but you're right. R-Truth was, in fact, the number one contender, which is he plays a part in that main event. Like, he distracts John Cena, which leads CM Punk to win. But we get to see Punk and Cena in the ring together, going one-on-one, and Punk's victory over John Cena is a big piece of the puzzle moving forward. Once you get to Capital Punishment, CM Punk is kind of doing a side thing with Rey Mysterio.
Which made no sense at all.
Yeah, which was just like a means to an end.
Their feud was over a year ago.
It's interesting because CM Punk says something on that Raw June 13th, and he says something at Capital Punishment when he's doing backstage promos. The first one at Raw on that June 13th was with Stone Cold Steve Austin when he says,
You just set in motion something that is going to change the landscape of the WWE forever.
so it's starting,
Is
right?
that the same night that Steve was like, "Hey son, you want a beer?"
Yes.
What? Like tequila? What? Vodka? No. He's like- he does the what, and I'm like, that was clever. That was probably Punk's idea. 'Cause
Probably.
writers were pretty bad at that point.
Well, and as you'll notice, Stone Cold Steve Austin was right here at the beginning of this build. And whose shirt is CM Punk wearing during the pipe bomb
which
promo?
which
Oh,
might be
Stone
my
Cold.
favorite part, right?
It just comes out wearing the Stone Cold shirt. I'm like,
Well,
why
there's
is he
so
wearing that?
there's so many parallels. Like
There are
you
a
hadn't
lot.
seen something blow up this much since the Stone Cold era. So okay, I'm getting ahead of us.
Well,
but-
no, you're absolutely right, and I want remember that Stone Cold thought that you just said, because I want to bring it back to that in just a minute. But at Capital Punishment, CM Punk says when he's backstage, he says, "I'm going to do the most honest thing you've ever seen in the WWE."
I love this promo. If you don't know the promo we're talking about, please go back and watch the Capital Punishment promo.
Not the whole pay-per-view.
Do not watch Capital Punishment.
Just the promo. Well, actually, the match against Mysterio was very
It's good.
I
It
went
is a
back
good
and
match.
watched it for
because
the
it's
good
Punk
match.
and Ray. They can both go.
Yeah, Punk and Mysterio. This is clearly a hint of what's to come. He's like going on about how DC is filled with scumbag politicians, and so is WWE.
Well, he's right. I mean,
Yeah, to be here, you have to be one. And that's how true that is, right?
it is, and this is like a decade ago.
And in fact, Punk goes on to say that the difference between himself and other politicians is he tells the truth. And as Spencer said, he would go on to do the most honest thing the WWE universe has ever seen. Seeds planted.
Yeah. So the next night on Raw, CM Punk opens the show. And that night is Power to the People episode.
Oh,
Power to the People. They get to text and vote.
Oh,
And my favorite thing is
fucking
that
hate 2011.
if you watch this on the network, yeah, it's like, come on, what are you doing? If you watch this on the network now, it just says, do not text, voting has closed.
Oh, really? It was 9 years ago? You
Right.
sure?
You mean I can't call this number and enter my name to win a house at the In Your House pay-per-view?
What?
Well, I know which box has the key to the house in it. Let me call in. What? That was 27 years ago? Oh. Okay.
So CM Punk opens the show and he says, yes, by the way, wins and losses still mean something. So I'm the number one contender for the WWE Championship. And he talks about how Alberto Del Rio is because he won at Capital Punishment, is trying to position himself in the number one contendership.
It's like the summer where he won like the number one contenders like 3 times, but does not get his match until like Survivor Series.
Something.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So he basically, CM Punk stages a sit-in because he's like, I'm not moving until someone tells me I'm the number one contender. But of course, this is also during the time period of everyone's favorite.
Diddle-a-ling, diddle-a-ling.
May I have your attention, please? I have just received an email from the anonymous Raw general manager.
I want you to stop right there because remember, we found out who it was. So don't say anonymous Raw general manager. I have an email from Hornswoggle.
No, come on. We all know Justin Roberts was actually the general
was him.
manager.
You
It was
know what the
him.
plan originally was? It was Michael Cole. That's how he got all that heat, and then they put the
I could see that because he was being built up as the big heel at that time.
Yeah.
That actually would have been something.
But like just,
Better than what it
just remember,
was, yeah.
anytime you're saying anonymous Hornswoggle. Hornswoggle sent me an email to remind you, blah, blah, blah.
How fun. What a moment.
I get so angry. I get so worked up over that because that was 2 years. Like, who is it? Hornswoggle. What the fuck? And they say that WCW didn't know how to do a finish.
Well, how about that? How's that spider? How's that spider doing?
Oh, no.
Then they dropped that like months ago.
He's not even in the company
Hey,
anymore.
Mojo Rawley saw it, all right? He knows what was in it.
Yeah, he like got fractured by it.
Yeah, that poor guy. So ultimately, the laptop tells him that he's now got to earn his number one contendership in a triple threat match against Alberto Del Rio and Rey Mysterio. Ultimately, Punk wins the triple threat, and he grabs the microphone after he wins.
July 17th, 2011 will be the most historic day, not only in the career of CM Punk, it's going to be a historic day for the WWE as a whole. July 17th is the day my contract with World Wrestling Entertainment comes to an end.
How right he was.
Yeah. Yeah. But, we talk about how historic July 17th is, but how about the next week on Raw? There's your Raw Roulette.
Raw Roulette. Oh my God, I remember this
June
shit.
27th.
Landon got me a Raw 20th anniversary box set for, I think, my 23rd birthday.
It was
Yeah,
your birthday.
23rd because it was 93. And so it's like the 20 best they're not the 20 best. They're the 20 most important episodes of Raw because these are the most important events in Raw history. So some of the episodes are garbage, but there's this amazing Bret Hart match from 95. Or this episode of Raw is shit, but the pipe bomb's on it. Or this one's shit, but Brock Lesnar returns. Or like there's this extremely high rating segment. Like they put the episode of Raw with the This Is Your Life segment in it. That episode of Raw is terrible, but This Is Your Life is like, holy shit, what's going to happen next?
Right.
So I remember watching that. I remember looking like, why is this random ass episode of Raw on there? I looked at the main event. John Cena versus R-Truth table. Oh, that's why this is on there.
Because legitimately, every time someone mentions this promo, the image that I see in my head is John Cena out of breath in the center of the ring with R-Truth in the corner through a table. Like that is the image in my head. So I will never forget that it was John Cena versus R-Truth in a tables match.
Can I ask you guys, do you remember who opened that show?
Nope.
I don't.
The Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Really?
Why?
He opens the show because he had something to promote. He was promoting his new outdoor show.
McMillan River Adventures?
That's right.
The fact that I remember that really upsets me.
That sounds like a ride at some like bee theme park.
Yeah, that sounds like a log ride at like
Blue Bayou. Listen, that's a Baton Rouge joke, and I'm sorry I had to make it because it's
but like that just makes me think. Oh, you go to Six Flags. Oh, they have the log flume ride. What's it called? Well, it's called McMillan River Adventures.
Ooh.
And it was promoted by none other than Shawn Michaels. Like, what? My favorite wrestler, and I love log rides. And you get to take a 8x10 and a Polaroid and an autograph for $150. No, thank you. I'll ride the ride for $3, please.
I think you're right, actually. But Shawn Michaels opens the show, and the reason why I bring it up is because he's interrupted by one CM Punk with David Otunga and Michael McGillicuddy. Because remember, the new Nexus, right?
Oh, my God. Is this before or after David Otunga would have his bedazzled coffee tumbler?
This is before that, but I like the coffee.
So good.
I like
And
the
every
coffee
week
tumbler.
it got more bedazzled.
Well, I feel like every week he got more muscles. Like his arms
Well, he did.
were ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it turns out when you're not wrestling full time and you're just an on-screen character, and you can work out a lot. Like remember, like Corporate Kane when Kane got fucking ripped at like 45.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it turns out when you're like only on TV twice a week, you have plenty of time to work out.
The thing that sticks out to me about this promo that I had also completely forgotten about, CM Punk says something to Shawn Michaels. He says,
It really is sad that you would rather put your hands together and get on your feet for a Hall of Famer, the past, Shawn Michaels, than get on your hands and knees and beg the future to stay.
Wow.
You know what I love most about this stuff is he came up with that. Like the writers didn't write any of his promos. Like they gave him suggestions and he was like, I'll think about it.
and most of the time he tossed them in the trash.
Yeah,
right?
I think he said he would just tear them up in front of him. Like, you don't know what I feel or what I'm going to say. And I think people were like, he said whatever he wanted. No,
I
he
don't know if he knew what he was going to say.
Well, from my understanding is that he had to clear things. He could just go out there with a live mic and say whatever the fuck he wanted. But at this time period, that's pretty much what he was doing.
Well, he says about the pipe bomb on the Best in the World documentary, he says, I walked in and one of the writers came up to me with a big smile on his face. He goes, "You're going to love this. They're going to give you a microphone and they want you to air your grievances." And Punk says, I just looked at him and I was like, surely you can't be serious.
That's why I love, and another reason why people say, oh, the pipe bombs will work. Well, no fucking shit, it's a work. But my favorite thing about it is when he legitimately gets pissed off at the end when they cut his mic off.
Well, it's just, I think a lot of it is, and Punk has mentioned this after, that it really was a whole career in the WWE worth of grievances.
Yeah.
Well,
from my understanding, the reason they cut his mic is he was told, do not mention Be a Star. Don't mention it. Because when they first interviewed him for the Be a Star campaign, they're like, oh, so you were bullied as a young child. What was the main thing? Oh, people would just walk up to me and they'd call me a word I'm not going to say because I don't want to get us in trouble. And like, oh, you can't say that. I'm like, well, that's the whole point of this whole bullying thing is that's what they used to call me. I'm like, well, you can't say that. So he's like, all right, fine, fuck your campaign. I'm not doing it.
yeah.
And I understand like where both sides are coming from. Like, yeah, we can't have you saying that on national television because we'll get like all sponsors will drop out. But at the same time is like, I'm trying to bring awareness that a lot of kids are going to be bullied. And
This is my story. This is what happened to me.
Yeah.
Like, so you're a hypocrite for not letting me say it, but at the same time, as a business, you don't want to be dropping that word on television, especially not nowadays.
Right. It's tough. Right. It's tough. But
I mean,
ultimately,
I got called that too when I was a kid, so I side with Punk on that.
yeah. At the end of the night on June 27th, after Raw Roulette, we get the pipe bomb in its entirety.
And I do love how on that DVD, they talk about it a lot, but when the time comes, they play it in its entirety, like the unedited version of it. And I'm like, oh, I forgot he does swear a lot in that promo.
What do you remember about the pipe bomb? Like, we all know it, right? What do you remember the most about it?
It's like, John Cena, the only thing that you're better at than I am is kissing Vince McMahon's ass. You're almost as good as Hulk Hogan was. You're not as good ass kisser as Dwayne. He's a pretty good ass kisser.
Amazing. I mean, it's just, this is Punk. Essentially, he essentially said, look, I'm done. I'm tired. I'm leaving. So they gave him the mic and said, go for it. He was like, okay, what's the worst thing to do? Fire me?
Can't fire me. They can cut my mic. But I do love when they cut that mic. That is a real, like, what? And he starts screaming to the camera, and they cut the audio.
Yeah, he's just like, you can't edit me. You can't silence me. Like,
They
so
did.
good.
They cut the sound. That's why it's so. If you watch it on the network, you can watch like people. I mean, it gets taken down, but always gets added back up on YouTube. If you can find like the live rip where you can actually still hear what he's saying, he says some really nasty shit when they cut his mic off.
Well, I'm sure he wasn't happy.
No, he was not. He was very pissed off because he was told he had so much time to talk, and they cut him short, like by a few minutes, because he started talking about the Be a Star campaign.
I think what's really interesting, because Lena, you just said that CM Punk didn't want to be silenced.
No.
Right? The next week on Raw is July 4th. And John Cena comes out, and his whole promo is about the First Amendment. Basically, CM Punk was suspended after that pipe bomb promo for that week on Raw. And CM Punk, and he's not there. So John Cena talks about how he shouldn't be silenced and he should be reinstated. We should be able to have our match because I'm Mr. America and I stand for, hustle, loyalty, respect, and the First Amendment.
Is this the same promo where he tells Vince that if you're going to treat me like this, I'll go to somebody else's company, brother?
Is that this one?
I don't know.
Well, they had a big standoff where he said that, and it was like,
I mean,
you can't mention Hulk Hogan.
This would have been the time to do it.
Yeah, I don't know if it was. I'm gonna have to look it up. But
I know they have a back and forth where he says that, and is like, oh.
There's been a lot of those moments between Vince McMahon and a top star where they're threatening him.
Yeah, but not like that. Not like,
but
hey,
not like that.
I'm just going to go. He didn't say TNA. I'm going to go to TNA and defend your belt. Because he was saying, if CM Punk wins that belt and walks in, I'm going to be embarrassed. I will not be embarrassed.
Well, this is the thing. Like, he doesn't want another Alundra Blaze, right? This has literally happened before.
But I love how, like, he knows that's not going to happen, but that's the storyline because that did happen to him.
Exactly.
It almost happened more than once.
It's what were we talking about? Blurring the lines between reality and fiction. And this is just the most blurred they get.
And the fact that Punk was suspended, whether it was really suspended or not, just played into the whole, I'm not putting him on television, fuck you. Like, no, because he's going to win that belt and he's going to leave. And I'm like, this is real life, damn it.
It makes all the sense, right? It totally feels like you're watching actual things play out. Like, this is how it's actually going down.
They played it off like it was real.
Because John Cena asked Vince McMahon for an explanation, right? Vince, the best he says is Punk deserved it. Okay. And John Cena says, if you don't feel like fighting, talking about, fighting for your title and your company and fighting to get CM Punk to stay, if you don't feel like fighting, maybe you should hang it up, old man. And that's what he says to Vince. And then Vince tells him, don't be Hogan. Yeah. He tells John Cena, don't be Hogan, which is fascinating to me. But again, this must be one of the many points where Hulk Hogan wasn't part of the company.
No,
right?
he was him and Bischoff are running TNA at this point.
Yeah.
Right, 2011.
Well, and Vince says everyone is replaceable, which it's shocking that he actually says it on TV because he thinks it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But it's weird, like, when you see Vince kind of not be Mr. McMahon, but just be Vince on TV like that and just say shit. Like, everybody knows he feels this way, but for him to come out and portray himself like that, it was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is,
What are you going to do with that?
I mean, it worked, but that could have backfired.
It could have. But ultimately, this is where we get the stipulation where John Cena gets fired if he loses.
Yeah,
because
if you
Vince
lose,
loses,
you're
it's
fine.
cool.
And I remember.
Well, yeah. Well, no, Cena. What does Cena do, right? He hands him the belt.
And walks out.
Cena's like, okay, here you go. I'm out. Because Cena is just like, he's not going to deal with that. He's not going to be a part of something like this. You know, like you said, First Amendment rights. He's got to be Mr. America. So he's going to stand up for what he believes in, which is something Cena has always done, love him or hate him. And so Vince makes the match. He brings CM Punk back. He's no longer suspended. You can have the shot.
Oh, God, that's when
But
it comes
Cena,
out.
if you lose...
Like, oh, no, his voice cracked when he said fire. It was like...
So that's how we get closer, right? So that's July 4th. We have one more Raw to go, and guess where this one is? In John Cena's hometown, or pretty close, Boston,
Oh,
Massachusetts.
God.
How did they do this?
Is this the episode? Is this the one where Punk comes out with the megaphone?
He opens the show with
Do
the
I have
megaphone.
everyone's attention now? His microphone and a megaphone. That actually has my favorite back and forth between him and John.
What you've lost sight of is what you are. And what you are is what you hate. You're the 10-time WWE champion. You're the man. Ladies and gentlemen, the champ is here. You, like the Red Sox, like Boston, are no longer the underdog. You're a dynasty. You are what you hate. You have become the New York Yankees.
So it's a really, really good. I mean, I'm not saying the Raw is good, but CM Punk in the beginning is good.
Promos are good.
And let me tell you something interesting about this show is that the contract negotiations, which closed the show, like CM Punk and Vince actually, quote unquote, going through airing their grievances and trying to work out a deal, goes 25 minutes.
Wow.
To
was
close
long,
out the
wasn't
show.
it?
25 minutes. And watching the network back, I don't see a commercial break. Like, I don't see a cut where
I
there
don't
was a
think
commercial.
there is. I think just go for it.
So I don't know how long the overrun was after 10:05 or 11:05, wherever
was
you're
long.
watching from, but it had to be really long. That segment goes 25 minutes, and I can't think of a lot of times where they've had a half-hour promo to close the show. I mean,
Right.
It's rare.
It's a long time.
And for it not to backfire either. But what's special about that promo is that's the first time we hear voice of the voiceless.
Yeah, at the end of the show in the contract negotiations, you're absolutely right. And
Seeing these two work so well across from each other is sort of mind-blowing,
Well, it's
considering what happened a few years after this.
Well, what I think is interesting is there's a lot of people out there that think both Punk and Cena can just talk and not wrestle. They're wrong. They both can, and they both can very well. And more importantly, they can work insanely well together. Because just back and forth for, 5 weeks is more interesting than 2 hours of Raw every Monday?
what's really interesting about this build is that last night in Boston, when, by the way, John Cena sounds extra Boston-y.
Yeah,
During
he
this-
Got
dropped
to.
his fake, I'm not actually from Boston.
Yeah, he's super Boston. I don't even know the word to describe it. But what's really interesting is that's the only time in this build that they're in the ring together, right? Other than their match prior to Capital Punishment. But from Capital Punishment to Money in the Bank, the only time they're in the ring together is the last 10 minutes of the last Raw prior to Money in the Bank.
Which is crazy because they don't do that now. Now it's like 5 weeks of them attacking each other, usually a match or two in between. Then we get the match that's usually the rubber match. I'm like,
yeah, it makes it such a big deal when the bell rings and they actually get to fight.
Yeah,
I
because
recall
all
in
we
the
got
old-
was a John Cena punch. That's it.
Yeah.
In the old days, you might get like the back and forth, but you didn't get like multiple matches before the match that you're supposed to pay for.
But that brings us to July 17th, right? In Chicago, Illinois, in the Allstate Arena. The commentary team, so good. We've got Michael Cole. We've got Jerry Lawler. We've got Booker T. It's a dream trio.
I love how you're giving them shit, but they did a really good job in this match.
I don't love them. I think they're okay. And I can't stand
lot of
Booker
sound
T on
bites.
commentary.
And I have to say, I would have bet money. I would have fought over this. I knew in my heart that this match was refereed by Charles Robinson.
It was not. I wish it was, because
I wrote that in my notes because I knew it was Charles Robinson. I'm like, that's Scott Armstrong.
it is Scott Armstrong.
Huh.
And I hate his count. I mean, listen, I obviously am the guy that's going to pick on the things that no one cares about. Like, let's talk about the title graphic. You know what I mean? But yeah, I like Scott Armstrong. Like as a
he's really good referee.
Yeah, it just the count frustrates me to some extent.
This match.
Yeah.
Talk about the most must-see event in WWE history. Like, this was one of those times.
What, The Miz?
Oh, no. I walked into that one. didn't I?
You did.
You did.
This was one of those times where you're watching what was going on and you just knew it was going to go down as one of the greatest moments in wrestling history. No hindsight required.
What I love so much about it is, of course, we get Punk coming out to Killswitch Engage for the final time. I love this so much when this happens in wrestling, where he comes out and his music stops playing, and there's 2 minutes of just the crowd fucking so loud.
Yeah, this is really fun.
And then he stands up and is like, come on, give it to me, give it to me. And he goes out and he hugs his mom, and then the crowd is like so loud. I have not seen an ovation like this since we reviewed Canadian Stampede.
Huh.
Where
Yeah,
it was just
you
like
might
the
be right.
crowd is so loud, they're so vocal, but I just love that 2 minutes of just let this moment of the fans in unison, everybody in this building on their feet cheering for Punk.
So before we get to Cena coming out, back at the top of the show, right? The actual beginning of this show starts with the ticking clock.
Yeah.
Right, and they use the pipe bomb promo for the promo video.
It's a really good opening package.
And did you notice that the scratch that they're used? They have like that like TV static that they go. Yeah, that is the same scratch that they use at the beginning of the Cult of Personality.
Isn't that crazy?
Whenever he does the Cult of Personality.
That's a nice tidbit.
I
didn't
had never
notice.
noticed that
Yeah,
before.
I hadn't noticed that either. That's really good. And before we get to Cena coming out, there's a couple of signs of the night that I'd like to point out.
Oh,
there's
there's some
one
good signs of the night.
Very specific, iconic one. It's on the hard camera. You cannot miss it. It's gigantic. If Punk loses, we riot.
And it's interesting here because we've seen similar signs like that, but they all say if Cena wins, we riot.
Well, the first time we saw that is at
ECW One Night Stand.
where it says if Cena wins, we riot. But this is the first time it's like, no, if Punk loses, we
If
riot.
Punk loses, it's a totally different message.
Because I like to say it's very telling whenever you have somebody in a match with John Cena where they'll boo John Cena, but they're not going to cheer his opponent. You get the "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" chant. But this match is not like that. This crowd is cheering everything Punk does. They're chanting for CM Punk. We get the "Let's go Cena, Cena sucks" chant, but it gets drowned out by just the CM Punk chants.
And that's extremely telling.
I think it is. I think you're absolutely right because, when you listen to the commentary during the entrances, Cole is still trying to sell Punk as a heel, but it's impossible when the crowd is going as crazy for him as they are.
And I know that's Vince McMahon, and you're like, tear him down, damn it. He can't be the hero. I'm like, then why'd you book this match in his hometown?
So I did end up watching this entire pay-per-view.
I feel sorry for you.
No, I really, all things considered, it might be the best pay-per-view in 2011. It's pretty decent.
I mean, it is, but it's still 2011.
I know.
I'll say this right now, because I did the same thing. That's why I feel sorry for you. Did you walk away from that viewing going, man, the Big Show and Mark Henry, that match is fucking awesome.
No, actually, where I stopped and decided, you know what, I'm going to talk about this, was Brie Bella versus Kelly Kelly for the Divas Championship.
Oh my God, how could you lose her? She didn't eat anything.
She literally does say that.
Yeah, into the live mic. Like, shut the
I was curious. It's been a while, or it's been 9 years, and a lot of work has been done in those 9 years, guys.
That's all we're going to say.
You can leave it at that.
Moving on. Actually, before we get too far in the match, you know what my biggest problem with this show is? The poster for it. The poster is the Big Show with
It is.
Hornswoggle on his lap,
It
opening
is.
up a bag.
Why?
You built this show around CM Punk, and that's the poster?
One thing that I think the Brie Bella Kelly Kelly match does have going for it is there's a fan in the front row who has a sign that says, "Show tolerance and respect. Bring back Orlando Jordan."
Oh,
And that is so relevant.
Yeah.
wow. Wow.
It's incredibly relevant.
I didn't watch
Well,
that
as
match,
you
which is why I didn't
recall,
notice that. But that is fascinating.
Around this
I
time
like
in
that.
TNA, he was looking at Rob Terry and like pouring himself lotion on his chest.
Uh-huh. It was crazy things that they were doing with him, but I really think we should have seen more of Orlando Jordan in WWE.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
he
I
was
agree
really
with that.
good, but it's like weird. They're like, "Oh, you're bisexual? Yeah, you're fired."
Right.
Oh, now you're
That's
in
the
TNA, blurring the lines a little too much.
That's a whole other story for another time, but you're absolutely right.
I really appreciated seeing the sign.
Yeah, it's good. That's really good. I'm glad you noticed that because I definitely didn't sit through that match. But
I did.
I want to tell you one thing that I noticed, and this made me feel like a nerd. Like this made me feel like wrestling nerd right here in this moment. In the front row, there is a guy that he at Money in the Bank, he's wearing a hat and he's taking pictures on his camera. And I recognized him immediately. He's in the front row. And the reason why I recognized him is because he was wearing a pastel button-down shirt in the front row at WrestleMania 25 for Shawn Michaels' Undertaker. Same person in the front row.
Huh.
He's got his wife and his kid. His kid is older by a few years now.
Well, it's been 9 years.
And I had to compare. And it was, in fact, that person. And it's WrestleMania 25, which was only, 3 years before?
Yeah.
2.5. So it's not like it's that long. But interesting. Those are two pretty good shows to have been in the front row for, if nothing else, for these two matches.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I just think of WrestleMania 25. I just think of that dickhead.
Where was WrestleMania 25?
Houston.
Yeah, that's a long way from Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting, I thought, but that's just me. One of the things that they say at the start of this match, like you said, it's about 33 minutes long. It's pretty lengthy, but it's pretty good.
It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't
moves.
feel like that at all. John Cena debuted in the Allstate Arena on SmackDown in 2002.
Wow.
They talk about that. They also talk about CM Punk being one of the gangsters at WrestleMania 22.
And that's one of my favorite things that CM Punk says in that last promo on the Go Home show, is that he says,
Earlier in this ring, you mentioned great wrestlers like Eddie Guerrero, and you said that they used to look at you and think that the kid couldn't hang. And now you stand here and look at me as the kid that can't hang. John, I was hanging off of your gangster car, WrestleMania 22, as it rolled down in Chicago, Illinois, and I stood there in a suit, looking as ridiculous as that man looks right now in a suit, holding a phony Tommy gun, and I said to myself, someday I'm not going to be standing out there watching you in the ring. I was going to be standing in the ring watching you go down to CM Punk.
you love to see that, right?
Oh, yeah.
You love to
just
see it.
watching this hype promo for the match, I thought, man, I miss wrestling.
I do too. I'd love to see it again.
Like, these moments are rare. You're on the verge of a revolution and you can taste it, you know it. And it's CM Punk in his hometown of Chicago. You couldn't write a better story.
No, you can't. Lightning in a bottle.
There are literally signs in the crowd that just give away how much people were into this match. There was a sign that said, "I heart Brutus Beefcake."
I like to talk about the sign that says CM Punk is going to Muay Thai kick John Cena so hard that he explodes into thousands of fruity pebbles.
That actually happened in the match, too.
Why do you think it made the list?
Oh, man.
Brutus Beefcake.
Oh,
That's so
God.
good.
He's never going to make our list.
Oh,
Sorry.
if you
Ed
want
Leslie.
more on Brutus Beefcake, head on over to Patreon for Last Mania.
We'll never see him
Standing.
again. So
That's true,
it's
but
sad.
you need those 10 episodes that we've dropped already.
Oh, God.
Okay, so let's hone in, right? The build, I mean, listen, the build is almost by itself good enough to make this list.
It is. It's like the rare occasion where the build and the match are both like 10s.
That's a huge point. That's a huge point because so many times we get a great build or what we think is so good, and then the match disappoints. And I'm not saying that there's anything specific like Hogan and Singh that I would point out in this moment, but
I see what you did there.
but in this case, the match absolutely lives up to
Oh,
the hype.
exactly. I was actually going to make that same comparison. But I was thinking, or a match that has no build like Eddie and Ray, but is like number 7 on our list. So it's like,
Right.
I do love the Money in the Bank stage with
Oh,
the
it's great.
screen as the briefcase.
It's good.
I
So
really
good.
wish we would get non-generic pay-per-view. I mean, obviously right now we're not going to get that, but just when things go back to normal, can we please get non-generic pay-per-views? Because I hate watching a pay-per-view and thinking, is this Raw?
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is Backlash. Like, well, why does it look like Raw?
Like, maybe we can just have a pay-per-view set. And I'd be okay with that.
I feel like the Big Four.
The Big
did
Four
that.
should have unique sets. They really
I
should.
agree with that.
I mean, I'm not saying I want a custom one for every show, but just give us a generic stage that is for the other 8 pay-per-views.
Here's what you do. You take iconic things and elements from our favorite set pieces in the past, and you use them every time. So we'll have a taxi every single time.
Or like if the pay-per-view lineup is the same every year, then just make a set for each show that is the same every year.
I'd be okay with that.
The problem is that it's not the same every year because we have our random Great Balls of Fire
That's
every
true.
now and then, you know? I'm with you. Whatever we need to do to get custom pay-per-view stages, I'm all for.
AEW does it.
Oh, who said it?
I don't know.
Nope.
That could have been any of us.
Could have been anybody.
I think it was Katie.
must have been Katie. Oh, she agreed. So let's jump into this match, right? So it's a good start, and really, I think the way this match starts is symbolic of how the match is as a whole. And what I mean by that is it's a back and forth start.
Yeah, I love how they don't just immediately start trading blows. They actually do have like this war of attrition. Who's the better wrestler? Like who can out grapple the other person? And I didn't remember the match starting that way. And honestly, they could just stand there for 20 minutes and the fans would have eaten it up. They were so loud. They were so vocal. They were so ready for this. It didn't matter what they did. They could have slapped each other across the face. Just stood there, standing, slap. The crowd would have been like, oh my God, best match ever. But I do love how very early on, Cena starts to try to out-wrestle CM Punk only to get the you can't wrestle chance as he does actually very impressive chain wrestling.
My favorite part about that "You Can't Wrestle" chant is Punk's reaction because he looks at the crowd and he sort of mimes it me or him. It's really
No, but what
funny.
I love is Cena does this really impressive wrist lock takeover, it's snapmare, roll it into a side headlock takedown. That's not easy to do. That takes a lot of skill and practice. So he can wrestle. Just because you don't like him doesn't mean he can't wrestle. And that was something at the time that I was coming to terms with as a fan.
Mm-hmm.
So watching this 9 years later, I'm like, he could.
He could go.
And especially
we
we're
just thought he couldn't.
We're reaching in 2011. We're getting to the part of his career where it's like he's getting to the best wrestling years of his career.
TLC next year, he breaks out a fucking Hurricane Rana.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was like, John Cena's doing Hurricane Rana. He does one in this fucking match. It's like, oh, God.
And I loved how, Spencer, I'll steal your thunder a little bit and talk about what's going on commentary. Michael Cole, who is the heel of all heel announcers at this point, can't support CM Punk.
No, he can't do it.
And I love how Cole actually reminds people the lengths that Vince McMahon would go to keep the WWE Championship safe, such as what happened in Survivor Series in Montreal.
Just let's plant that little thought.
There's a
reason. There's a reason he says that
right there.
right at the beginning of the match.
But what a great point that even Michael Cole can't support CM
No, he
Punk.
can't
That's
do
huge.
it.
I hadn't made that connection. That's a big
He's
deal.
supposed to be the heel, but he can't support him. But one thing I would like to say is, we mentioned the whole Cena gets the you can't wrestle chance, but he then goes hold for hold with Punk the first 10 minutes as if to say, hey, assholes, yeah, I can.
Well, and I love that it's chain wrestling to start off because it sets the tone. This is a masterclass of pacing. It's so stop and go.
Well, and that's it. Let's think about Punk and Joe, right? Like CM Punk is the guy that wanted to wrestle for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
and
he
so
did, and
on.
he did.
So in order to do that, you have to be able to pace well. And so 30 minutes is short for him, but it's really paced really well.
Him and Chris Hero would regularly have 90-minute 2 out of 3 falls matches regularly. But one thing I really enjoyed about this match is, very early on, I noticed that there are 2 juggalos in the 5th row.
Yep, I saw them. I
On
saw
my
them.
hard camera.
I didn't
And
see
I'm
him. That's
they're very distracting. And then very early on, I'm not calling it the AA, FU attempt, which is turned into a GTS attempt, which is then turned into just a random, just any old fucking hold. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Followed by massive CM Punk chance. And we get Booker T's first line of the night. This is a chess match.
It is, though. I mean,
He's
it's
absolutely right.
Rubber ducky, whatever. It's
Shucky ducky,
quack, quack.
Well,
All right,
I don't
Landon.
care. But it is. You know, like as much as I hate Booker T on commentary. Like I do. I'm sorry.
I would like to
This
apologize,
is
though.
actually like 6 months when we got Shucky Ducky Quack Quack happened at Survivor Series.
I would like to apologize because that's going to now be a running bit of Paul and I saying it simultaneously every episode. So get ready.
Oh, I've got
Hate
a lot
Booker
of.
T on commentary. Please get back in the ring.
Oh, I've got some Booker T lines for you, gentlemen.
But so one of the things that I really liked here, though, is Punk tosses Cena out of the ring. And he takes his time getting out to bring him back. And he actually gets a high five from his buddy in the front row. Did y'all catch who this
hang on,
was?
I love this. It's like, CM Punk slapping highs with the Chicago natives. That was Colt Cabana.
That wasn't.
There's
that Colt
literally,
Cabana.
it's very faint, but you can hear it. Colt Cabana.
And who's standing right next to Colt Cabana? Ace Steel, the guy that trained CM Punk. And then next to him is his mom and his sister.
Yeah, if you knew these things while you were watching it, then you kind of knew what was going to happen.
What I really
here.
loved about this is that when that happened, my girlfriend was watching it. She went, boom, boom, Colt Cabana, boom, boom. She started singing his song, and I'm like, that's tomorrow night.
What I love in Cena trying to get back into the ring, Punk drapes him over the apron and then delivers a knee from the top rope across Cena's, like the back of his neck.
It's gorgeous.
So
It's
fucking
beautiful.
stiff too.
It did look really stiff.
There are a few knees in this match that look pretty stiff.
From CM Punk? No
he
way.
throws a couple of knee strikes. So I'm like, is he trying to kill Cena? Because like he looks like the shine. Like Cena's tied up in the rope. He's like the running shining wizard twice. When they show the slow motion replay, I'm like,
Literally,
oh no,
clipped his chin.
he connected with that.
Yeah.
Which is funny because right after that happens, Cena hits him with a clothesline where he fucking connects, and you see CM Punk like checking his teeth, and then goes, oh man, knocked a tooth out there.
We talked about Booker T briefly. I've got another Booker T line.
Okay.
Let me tell you something about this match right here. This is about the WWE Championship. Cole says, really?
Look, I have won every major title, but I have never won the WWE Championship.
Yeah, but Cole is nice enough to point out that he nor Jerry Lawler have won the WWE Championship.
Yeah, and then he's like, oh yeah, you haven't won it either, have you, Jerry? I'm like, shut the fuck up, Cole.
Jerry's not happy about it. He's not happy either.
Jerry, honestly, he should have won it at the February show. He should have won it. There's only a moment where, like, if you give Jerry that title right now, no one will complain. Even if he only has it for 5 minutes, let him have it. Just give it to him because the fans were going insane when he almost won it.
Against The Miz, right?
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
going berserk for Jerry to win the belt. I was like, they're gonna give Jerry the belt. I'm like, even if he like the next thing, hey guys, I'm very honored to have this belt, but I'm actually retired, so I'm gonna surrender this belt. Have a tournament. They could have done anything. Have him win it the next week. He can be like, look, I'm not an active competitor. I'm gonna surrender this belt, but this has been the dream of like the opportunity of my life. This is my lifelong dream was to hold this belt, and I got to hold it for a week.
I wanted it.
Did I just do a better writing job than the WWE did?
I know. It's surprising.
Wouldn't shock me.
Oh man, but
Cena hits a sit-out power slam that I'm not sure if I've ever seen before or since. You know what I'm talking about here? He has him over his shoulder, like draped over the shoulder, and he goes for the straight-up power slam. It's not a side slam; it's a frontward power slam. But he sits down.
he nearly does like a Michinoku driver. Twitch Cole says,
Right.
that was unique. 1, 2, kick out. I'm like, Cole, can you just stop?
It's one of these moments, though, where you think that this might be where someone takes, like, real advantage. Like, they take real control of the match. Like, Cena's going to take control, but Punk starts to fire up.
Oh, God, dude, he does like the springboard crossbody, and then I did not in a million years expect this. You know when we get I'm going to suplex you out of the ring. No, I'm going to suplex you into the ring. No, I'm actually going to suplex you out of the ring onto the outside, and you're going to
Yeah.
land flush. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it looked like it hurt.
It did hurt, and then whenever the Punk got up, you could see the entire outline of his body.
But the thing about that is what sort of shocked me here is if you watch closely, I'm pretty sure Punk was calling this match.
He was.
Usually you see
Oh,
Cena.
no, there's a couple of really bad camera shots where you can see Punk you can't read his lips, but you can tell he's right in Cena's ear calling
Because
spots.
usually you literally hear Cena call his matches.
Now, Nakamura! Now, Shinsuke! Hit me now!
Usually you hear him. But no, it was Punk calling this match, which was so poetic.
Yes, it is poetic because after we notice this, we get the dreaded abdominal stretch.
Actually, I loved Cena putting on that abdominal stretch in the middle of the ring. I really got Flair Steamboat vibes at this
I
point
did
in the
too.
match.
And then at one point, a good friend of mine who was watching the match, and he said, "Does that hurt?" I said, "No, it doesn't at all. Actually, it's actually a very good stretch. If you want it to hurt, what you need to do is grab that back leg and then meet it to their shoulder. Then it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on you."
Hey, that's what you did to me every time we were in the ring together.
Yeah, because it looked painful. Because it was painful.
Fuck you, dude.
No, when you take a hold and actually make it a hold, and they can tell you're in pain.
Get down. Indian Deathlock right now. Come here.
Oh, God.
Come here.
We've gone off the rails. What I can tell you is that, again, the abdominal stretch, which normally would be a move that reads, I hate this. For
Yeah,
me.
I also love how he didn't grab the top rope. I'm like, oh, missed a trick there.
Missed
He
opportunity.
didn't grab the top rope. He didn't like squeeze his ribs. Like, damn it, you're missing. I'm like, oh, that's right, because you're not a bad guy. Damn it. It's the reason why baby faces don't do the abdominal stretch.
Yeah, but it does enough to slow Punk down.
Yes.
In this instance, ultimately they end up getting out of it. Punk gets out of it, and then there's a double clothesline, both men down center of the ring. Right, Been
And
there.
then immediately, vintage Cena. I'm like, what? Double clothesline?
Well, next would be vintage Cena, right? Because he starts the 5 moves of doom, right? He starts those. But Punk actually is able to reverse the suplex at first, and he attempts a roll-up, which is countered because then Punk goes for that corner bulldog that that knee strike that he's done so well.
Shining Lizard.
And Cena reverses that. He finally gets the suplex. Punk is able to reverse the 5-knuckle shuffle, and he throws
Very
Cena
well-placed
back
kick.
out of the ring.
When he did it, I was like, oh, how come nobody else does that? Oh, God. This is a fucking suicide dive. I'm like, oh, God. Like, how? And I kept looking at the clock, like, how much time is left in this match? Because they're really starting to ramp it up.
Yeah, and we're at this point, we're about 20 minutes in, so we've still got a good 13 or 14 minutes left.
We see Punk hit that series of strikes and that leg sweep on Cena, and I really got those ROH
Yeah, I did too.
Punk
Yeah.
vibes. Like, you can tell that this match is literally the epitome of his entire career. It's all coming to a head right here.
And we get up to a sequence which I know CM Punk called. There's no way in hell John Cena would have done this. So the GTS is reversed into a gut wrench suplex. When has John Cena ever done a gut wrench suplex?
I don't know. He's got the arms for it. I think he's
He
probably done it
does,
a
but
few
he
times.
never does that move. I'm like, that's a Claudio, that's a Cesaro thing. I'm like,
That's just peek behind the curtain. That's in Paul's top 5 favorite moves.
The gut wrench?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
well, you can do so much with it.
Well, what I love there is that it almost shows, because Cena doesn't do it, it shows how hard he has to work to try to beat CM Punk.
Well, it's like I said earlier, like it's as if he's pulling out these moves as if to say, hey guys, I can wrestle. I'm gonna go hold for a hold with Punk tonight, and I'm gonna break out shit that I'm never gonna do again. Case in point, he does a fucking top rope clothesline. But what I love is so after this, Punk hits those 2 shining wizards we were talking about where Cena's in the ropes. And we're like, ooh. And then he does a bulldog, and then he does the diving clothesline, which I was like, I don't remember Punk doing the diving clothesline until a couple of years later, but I guess he did. But, gentlemen, STF, middle of the ring. That's it. Tap out, Punk. Tap out, Punk. Tap out, Punk. Shut the fuck up, Michael Cole.
Well, was this that counter sequence? There was a series of counters right here where it
that
was
comes
like,
a little bit later.
okay,
But at that point, my jaw hit the floor.
double A, like I'm gonna call it double A attitude adjustment, but F you, reverse to the GTS, reverse to the
Well,
STF.
hang on.
So
Forget.
smooth.
There you got to remember, Punk does the top rope crossbody. Cena rolls backwards,
Yes.
picks him up for the FU, and then that gets turned into a GTS. The GTS attempt gets turned into the STF. Punk turns the STF into the Anaconda Vice.
So
I don't know how he did that.
I'm
So
convinced that Michael Cole doesn't know that it's called the Anaconda Vice, because he just calls it a submission maneuver, and earlier in the match he called it something else.
That unique maneuver.
Yeah, which is just annoying. But you're right. The STF to Anaconda Vice,
How did he do that?
insane.
It's just like locked in. Like, what?
But the thing is, he made it look so natural. He makes it look easy.
I'm not guaranteed they had to rehearse that.
It looked good. It looked good.
And then like finally, after like we're 25 or 26 minutes, John Cena finally hits the FU. Like, he did it, but Punk kicks out. And I was like, oh. And then, gentlemen, everything in the last year and month has led us to this moment.
Cena's leg drop off
John
the top.
Cena does the diving leg drop from the top rope. And as if CM Punk looked 9 years in the future and said, one day, a young man who I met at New Orleans Comic-Con and was very nice to is going to have a podcast where he has a power bomb count. CM Punk catches John Cena, power bomb,
Season 3 streak has begun.
the streak,
Yeah. I mean,
season 3.
as soon as Cena tries for, I mean, what is it? The flying Hogan or whatever it's called?
The famous.
But
sir.
Hogan, I mean, Cena, excuse me.
flying-
Freudian
Whoa,
slip.
what happened
Oh,
there?
Freudian
Man.
slip. But God bless him. He's selling from bell to bell.
Well, you know
Punk.
what blows my mind about he does the diving famouser is you remember in like 2008, Batista powerbombed him and broke his fucking neck. But he still breaks that out like every time he has a big match. I'm like, stop doing that.
Well, I love it
Stop.
because he does this huge move, but he can't capitalize on it because he's selling all of these rib injuries
Well, yeah,
that
when
he's
he-
taken.
when he
and the
actually-
abdominal stretch and
Yeah.
all of this work being done to the center of his core.
Well, I love that like when he actually does hit it like to no fanfare because he gets no reaction.
Well, he's hurt, so it gives Cena the opportunity to do the spot again. He hits the flying Hogan drop, and it looks brutal. I mean, but Punk kicks out.
Yes, he does. And then we get the next moment that I completely forgot about. We get a top rope FU attempted, and Punk does a fucking Frankensteiner.
Yep.
What?
You gotta love it.
Gorgeous.
You gotta love it.
Frankensteiner, Shining Wizard. But Cena falls out of the ring.
Yeah, he hits the GTS and it doesn't connect to the head. It connects more to the ribs, and there goes Cena.
He falls out of the ring. Like,
Well,
no.
so
come
at
on,
this
get it back
point,
in there.
at this point, Cena has hit another AA clean, and Punk kicks out, and Cena's pissed. You can actually watch Cena go to the referee, and he's like red in the face. I don't remember Cena doing a whole bunch of this in that time period. Like, you're seeing more frustration build in Cena than you usually do. But
Well, there were rumblings around this time of turning him heel.
oh yeah, I remember the heel turn segment.
I think if Punk left, they were going to turn him heel because that was the only thing they could have done to capitalize on missing out this. But I think Punk staying is the reason why Johnson never turned heel.
Well, God damn it.
So
But
I love you, Punk, but I hate you for that.
Punk does, but like we said, Punk gets the GTS off, but he's weak. He's still selling. He can't get Cena in the middle of the ring. He doesn't connect the head. Cena rolls out of the ring.
Well, he kind of gets knocked out of the ring. It's weird because it never happens. It's like it looks like he just kind of like lost his balance and fell out of the ring. Like that never happens because they are routinely conditioned to not do that. So when somebody does just slip and fall out of the ring like that, it looks like, is he okay? What's going to happen? And then here comes Vince McMahon.
Of course. Just as it looks like Punk may get the victory here.
And I'll never forget this because once again, I said my buddy was watching this with me. He said, his sleeves are too long. I'm like, what? And then they showed the shot from behind where like the cuffs of his jacket were past his fingers. And I'm like, huh.
Well, it's actually Vince McMahon and Johnny Ace.
Yep.
John Laurinaitis.
Cena gets Punk into the STF off the distraction.
Vince immediately, ring the bell, ring the bell. And he's like, no, not going to do that. And he decks Laurinaitis. And
Yeah,
goes,
Cena,
like, "Nuh-uh,
Cena will not win that way.
not doing it that way.
So,
We'll do it
what
my
I
way."
want to make note here is that you can see what he says after Cena hits Laurinaitis. He says, "A man's gonna win this fight," and that's what he kind of mouths to Vince.
Yeah, then he walks over to Vince and he said, doing it my way, not doing it your way. Comes
Does
back in the
that
ring.
imply Shawn Michaels is not a man?
Possibly. Well, he did poison Playgirl.
Only men can pose in Playgirl.
Never mind. There was a joke about a year
Let's not
later
go
where
there.
it's like, hey, remember when they hit the DX reunion at like Raw 20? And he was like, Billy Gunn's like, I got to do this part. Like, no, Billy, stop it. If you keep playing, Sean's going to lose his smile and go do weird things like posing Playgirl.
I remember that. I remember that.
It's like, I was young and stupid. I needed the money. But Cena goes back in the ring, immediately gets caught in the GTS and hit, and then Punk pins him. I'm like, oh, shit. That was very matter of fact, very quick. And I love this. He's celebrating. No, I said, no, stop the music. Stop the music. Now, get that crap off right now. Give me Del Rio. Get him out right. Get him out right now. I love Del Rio comes out and immediately just gets hit in the face with a savate kick.
Yep.
So I had actually forgotten that part. Like I remembered obviously CM Punk winning, but I had forgotten that Vince called for Del Rio to
Get
cash
that Del
in his
Rio
Money
guy
in the
out
Bank
here.
that
It's
he won
over
earlier in the
It's
night.
over in a second.
It is, which I guess is why I forgot.
Well, the bell never rang, but like he comes to the ring, and as he's walking the ring, Punk hits that like Muay Thai. I call it a savate kick. Is what it's actually called. Hits a savate kick and like knocks him out, and then he jumps out of the ring, over the barricade.
Blows
a kiss to
that
Vince
kiss
McMahon.
goodbye.
So Punk's face when he's handed the belt just breaks me. I mean, it's just unbelievably genuine.
It's almost like he didn't realize this is actually going to happen.
Well, we've talked about how this blurs the line between reality and fiction, and essentially at this point, the line is shattered because at this moment, right here, it benefits so much from the blurring of the lines because this is CM Punk's genuine reaction to winning the top prize in the wrestling world.
Yes.
This is his entire life's work, and you could see that build from the match, right? You saw the Anaconda Vice. You saw these Enziguris. You saw all of these Shining Wizards and these things, these strikes that you see that he used all the way back from ROH. This is literally the culmination of his entire life's work.
It's a swan song.
And it's coming to fruition not only on his own terms, but because of who he is. And
Yes.
because he refused to be just another overpaid, underutilized talent that slipped through the cracks.
Yeah. And my favorite story about this is he said when he left, he didn't shower. He went straight home. He threw the title belt in the fridge. And there's a picture of it. Like they post a picture of it on his documentary.
Love it.
Threw it in the fridge. He didn't shower. He went home in his gear because he lived like 10 minutes away from the stadium.
Which is funny because Cole says, in 1 hour and 14 minutes, Punk would be leaving the WWE and leaving Chicago. He's not leaving Chicago.
He's staying right there.
And all I got to say is, and I'm saying it because Vince was there, this was such good shit. But guys, favorite moments.
Well, actually, my favorite moment of the whole thing didn't happen in the ring. Punk signed a new deal in the building on the day of the show.
Yeah.
Which just blows my...
So
think
I've
about
heard,
that.
I've heard that it was like halfway through Money in the Bank. He actually signed the new deal.
I've heard.
Think
I've
about
heard,
that.
I've heard
How
like
stressful that would have been for Vince McMahon.
no, I've legitimately heard that like he did it like as he's walking out to the ring. I don't believe that, but I think the official story is about halfway through the show because he signed an extension to do the show.
What the fuck would have happened
If he said no, he would have lost the match.
if Punk would have lost the match in Chicago? What would have happened?
People would have turned on the company.
I mean, obviously, Raw the next night was can't miss.
It was because he wasn't there. The tournament they had where
Oh, yeah.
where Rey Mysterio won, and then the same night, hey, why don't you go face John Cena again? Oh, yay, John Cena wins. Hey,
Man,
fuck you, Ray.
I don't know if that sounds familiar to anyone, but I'm just getting WrestleMania 9 vibes.
Well, no, see, this is the thing. Like, there's a tournament, and The Miz and Rey Mysterio make it to the finals, but before the finals start, like shit starts to fall apart, right? Vince called Cena to the ring to publicly fire him before the match.
Oh, this is when Triple H walks out,
and
and it was
Triple
like,
H comes out.
like fucking tears in his eyes. Like, Vince, the board of directors has filed an injunction. You're out.
The board has said to remove you after a vote of no confidence. No confidence.
Which
Triple H
explains
is
how
crying.
everyone's felt about Vince for about 10
Trips.
years.
I mean, it's
Trips is crying. Vince fucking just starts weeping. Like, I've never seen someone cry like that outside of like a funeral
and
or.
meanwhile, CM Punk is at the San Diego Comic-Con calling out Triple H
Oh, I remember this.
for trying to crown a WWE champion when Punk still has the belt. It's so good. And I love the long play here. And sure, they probably could have played it up a little bit longer than they
it's
did.
2 weeks. It should have been a month. It should have been SummerSlam.
It
SummerSlam.
it was among the best booking they've ever done.
He should have been gone for at least an entire month. He should not have appeared until right before SummerSlam. The go home to SummerSlam should have been Punk walking out with that belt.
Yep. And so Cena does end up beating Rey Mysterio for the belt on the same night that
Rey
Mysterio
Mysterio won
wins it.
They just hate Rey Mysterio.
And then Punk's new music hits, Cult of Personality.
That's how the world goes off the air.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he's back. He's got the belt. He's got new music.
And Cena's got his belt, and that's the lead into the SummerSlam match.
So clearly what's going to happen is they're going to have a ladder match to see who the real
Clearly.
Where were we? Oh, we're WrestleMania 10. All right, but gentlemen, I got to say, favorite moments.
Well, one of them is when Cena's leaned up against the ropes and he takes the knee to the face.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just brilliant.
Oh, two.
But I don't know. Like I love so much of the mic work leading up to
It's
the
so
match. But if I'm picking a favorite moment from the match itself, and Landon, I apologize if I'm stealing yours, but it might be that STF into the Anaconda Vice, because that whole sequence was
that entire reversal sequence is just
beautiful.
That's
stuff.
a reason
it was
why
beautiful.
There's a reason why I insisted on it. No, I'm going to call it move for move because I wrote all of it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'm going outside of the rules by picking something outside of the match, but
No, you're not.
when Scott Armstrong hands him the belt,
That's considered part of the match.
it's just the greatest for me.
Well, like I said,
think
like
I
the
think
look
that's
on
probably
Punk's
the favorite.
face was, I didn't think this was actually going to happen.
Exactly.
I always had the feeling that he thought the reason why they wanted to do the screw job sequence was so they could actually screw him.
It really was genuine, and I think there's nothing that'll top that for me.
For me, honestly, my favorite moments of the match are Punk's entrance and Punk's exit.
Yeah, it was
There
fun.
you go. It's
Because like I hate whenever we all say the same thing. We're like, oh, what's your favorite? Oh, well, this. What's yours? This. What's yours? Well, those exact same three things.
It's clobbering time.
It's the first time he said it
First time? I don't know.
in WWE.
man. I just
Like
have so
the
fond
entrance he
memories of
does
this.
there where he like checks the dirt, looks at his watch, and shouts his clobber time. It's the first time he did it.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
He did it all the time in other companies. But it's the first time he did it there, and that was his interest the day he left.
So we have done 40 matches prior to this moment.
Yes, we have.
It is now season 3.
Yes, it is.
And for the first time in season 3, it's time to rank it.
And for the first time since we started the show, I actually thought about this beforehand and wrote it down. And I will not back down.
What a novel idea.
Huh.
I should have done that.
That makes
When this match
exactly
was over,
one of us.
I checked all my notes. And I'm like, okay. So we don't spend 45 minutes talking about it.
Well, I think part of the reason why ranking is so tough is because all three of us, more often than not, tend to come in on very different.
We do. But I know normally I will throw out the softball and see how you guys react, and then we'll give you my actual answer. But I had 48 hours to think about this, about where I was going to rank it, not the match. I had a long time to think about the match. 48 hours to think about it. And I will honestly say that at 6:23 a.m. this morning, I made my decision.
Well, okay, I want to know what it is, but before you go there, we should let everyone know, in case for some reason they missed our season 2 finale, our rankings did change just a bit.
They did.
Yes, I did.
They did, way more than the season 1 finale. So the number 1 match on our greatest wrestling matches of all time currently is Bret Hart, Steve Austin, WrestleMania 13. That is number 1. Number 40, just so you know, is TLC 1. And then there's, 38 matches in between.
It's the match.
Yeah. Paul, 6:23 a.m.
It came to me. I woke up from. I was kidding. I was actually at work at the 6:23 a.m. I was sitting in my car thinking, you know what? This match is number 15. I will not change my mind. I said it.
So it's 15, so you're putting it above the current 15 match, which is Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard.
I am putting it above Tully and Blanchard.
Okay, and that's just underneath another John Cena match, which is John Cena versus Shawn Michaels.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this match was Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat,
Right.
which is currently at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that there's a lot of stuff up there in that range that could easily beat out this match as far as wrestling ability and as far as just overall impact of what was going on at the time. But I think this match has a lot to say.
It really
This match
does.
had a huge impact on the wrestling world. The things that are still being felt. I mean, let's talk about the legacy of this match for a sec, right? This match is responsible for so many branching storylines and creative changes that occurred in 2011, right? So here are a few things that happened because of Punk Cena Money in the Bank. Vince McMahon is relieved of his daily duties. Triple H, permanently recognized as an authority figure.
and then goes on to cut all of CM Punk's momentum.
Punk goes on to become one of the longest reigning champions of all time.
Not just of the modern era. That's a buzzword that someone in the back wants you to say. They probably want to put it on a T-shirt.
Well, at the time, he was like number 4. Right now, he's like number 5, but still.
The entire WWE roster holds a walkout
Yeah.
at some point during this time period. That was because of this. Kane actually returns with his mask,
Yes, he does.
and that has ties
And
to
he
what
was-
happened here.
Yeah, and he was like the best version of Kane for like 3 weeks, and then it just dropped off a cliff.
And maybe the most important thing in my mind, which people are going to laugh, Cena starts moving into a darker character. I really think that's huge for what was going on, because one of the things that was dragging WWE down at the time was Cena being so stale for so long. And this is the start
Squeaky clean.
of Cena losing kind of a lot.
That's a good point, because I mean, flash forward, and this is going to be the second time that I reference this promo, kind of back to back. But the next year or so, next year and a half later, when The Rock is set to face CM Punk at the Royal Rumble, something CM Punk says in his famous sort of pipe bomb from that build.
Can we please stop calling the pipe bombs, please? They're promos. Sorry.
Well, to quote CM Punk, actually, in anyone else's hands, this is a microphone. In my hands, it's a pipe bomb.
That means the microphone.
I'm aware, so I'm going to refer to his promo as a pipe bomb. The one with The Rock is, he says, why do you think John Cena, who's had arguably admittedly the worst year of his career, gets title shot after title shot after title shot? And so he's saying that Cena's been losing a lot. And in that last year and a half since Money in the Bank 2011, he's been losing a lot. And
Yeah.
and you think about WrestleMania 28, he loses. He wins obviously at 29, but then he doesn't win at 30, and and it's kind of, we're into this kind of latter part of Cena's career where he does play that role. So I think you're right about Cena playing a darker character. I think you're right.
Yeah, so considering everything that it changes, does that earn it a top 10 spot? Or do we just take it for sort of what it is? In which case, Paul, I'd agree with you. I would put it, based on wrestling alone, somewhere within the 15-16 area.
I don't know. Wrestling match alone, I love this wrestling match because it's back and forth, and you don't really know who is gonna win. It's one of those. It's one of those rare times where we don't really have a clue what's gonna happen.
And that, well, of course, the first time we watched it, we had no idea what was going to happen. I mean, 9 years later, we obviously know how the match ends. But even then, I still found myself kind of going, "Oh, I forgot! It's so quick. You'll miss it, like the way it ends." And I felt like that's very poetic that it ends so quickly and so decisively. And if you recall, they have about like 7 or 8 more matches in this feud, and they all are they're over. It's never a fluke win. Somebody always wins defiantly. Like this is like your definitive winner of this contest is CM Punk. Your definitive winner is John Cena. It's like these
I wouldn't
two-
argue that that's necessarily true. I mean, if you think about, when Cena and Punk face each other over and over again, what I remember a lot is like Night of Champions, where they're both pinned, right? They both get pinned off a superplex. It's just, to me, it's really interesting. I don't know if this Money in the Bank wrestling match is the best match that Cena and Punk have. Part of me thinks the number one contendership match for WrestleMania 29, when Cena faces Punk to have the right to face The Rock at WrestleMania 29. Like that
one is
on
really
Raw
good.
is really good. It might be a better wrestling match than this one at Money in the Bank. So I'm pretty torn. Initially I was thinking 12. Which is right above Samoa Joe CM Punk, because I do think this is hugely important, and I think for a lot of the reasons that Landon said, it's had a very long lasting impact. It was this build, and the second summer of Punk after, that made Punk sort of this hero, but it doesn't happen without this first.
No, it doesn't.
And this is why we heard CM Punk chants at WWE events for 10 years later.
Yeah.
We still hear him every now and then.
Right. Every now and then we'll still hear him. So I kind of like the impact that this match makes, and I think it does make it important. So I'm gonna personally say 12, but I'm curious to see where you guys stand.
I agree to your terms.
At 12, okay. So can we crawl up? Can we crawl up from 16?
From
Yeah.
16. Okay.
Because
So
I was kind of content with 16, and I knew you were either going to go higher or lower than that, and I was kind of hoping it would be lower. So if we crawl up from 16, we've got Bayley versus Sasha Banks at NXT TakeOver Respect. What about this match screams that it's more important than Bayley versus Sasha Banks?
I think Bayley versus Sasha Banks, although that was their Iron Man match, and that was important because it was the first women's Iron Man match, right? I think their Brooklyn match is more important than that one at Respect.
I agree.
So I would put Money in the Bank over that one.
Okay.
If you crawl up to TA and Blanchard, that's arguably the greatest U.S. championship match ever.
yes,
It's not my cup of tea.
it's a bloodbath. it's a brawl. It's not a wrestling match.
It's different. Yeah, okay.
It's very
I
good.
could see putting this over that.
Yeah. So let's go up. John Cena, Shawn Michaels. It's kind of what we've said for a long time is sort of this is the barrier, right? John Cena, Shawn Michaels from Raw. They go almost an hour. It's a great wrestling match. It's fallout from WrestleMania 23, but I don't know if it changes anything like Punk Money in the Bank changes anything.
Okay, I definitely see that. I mean, you have a really, really solid wrestling match, but this is, like you said, this is fallout from a story that's been ongoing, and it's not so much the culmination of much.
Yeah. If you go up from that, it's the Unbreakable 2005 Triple Threat, Styles, Joe, and Daniels. And this is where you get kind of tough, right? I can't tell you a single thing about the build for that match, but I can tell you it's an incredible wrestling match.
Oh, it's amazing.
One of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen. And obviously I know some of the build, but you get the point I'm saying is that it's not memorable in the way that this one is, which is, now we're starting to. This is the hard part about the list, right? Like now we're just kind of picking hairs, right? It's the small things, and so the Triple Threat is a better wrestling match probably, but it's also what do you like? Do you like fast paced X Division Triple Threat, or do you like one-on-one, really well paced back and forth? It's hard.
Yeah, but the problem is I like both.
Well,
Yeah,
and you're allowed
well,
to like both,
I
but when
could-
we're
Yeah,
comparing them,
And
But
so
you can't really compare
here's
them.
the interesting spot for me. So 12 is a match featuring CM Punk. It's Samoa Joe versus CM Punk. 14 is a match featuring John Cena. And right there in the middle, either is a match that features neither of them, but we're thinking about sandwiching in the CM Punk John Cena match between CM Punk and John Cena matches.
I just realized that
Why do we think that is?
because that's like the high standard of their matches.
It is. Like, this is the kind of work that they do.
Yeah.
And so, it's not so much the end of the world for me that this is happening. But so what puts it above CM Punk versus Samoa Joe at Joe Punk 2?
Well, first of all, Joe Punk 2 was a tie.
It was a tie,
Which-
and I remember that did affect my ranking of it. I was going to rank it higher.
Yeah, I mean, and Landon, I mean, we've made comments before about how I don't love draws generally.
To
But-
quote Jim Ross, a type of kiss your sister outcome, which is just the weirdest fucking way to describe a tie.
It is.
I'm like, are you trying to tell me something, JR? No, you're not. But okay, I messed up talking.
So I I guess for me, I'm left Money in the Bank 2011 with lasting images, with the entrance, with the win, with the exit. With Punk and Joe, I'm remembering great wrestling holds for an hour long. But if you ask me 10 more years from now, which match I'll remember more, it's going to be this Money in
one.
the Bank match.
I agree.
It's more rewatchable for that reason. I don't know. It's when we talk about the things that matter, when we start ranking these matches, I think Punk Cena checks more off the list.
Yeah.
I agree.
And so that would leave Hakuto and Kondori at number 11 holding strong.
Yeah.
So what is
Yes.
it about that match, do you think, is playing guard dog a little too well?
The blood.
The blood. It's all about the
It
No.
blood.
could be the blood. What do you think, Paul? Why would?
Well, they're similar length, and they're both, pun intended, blood feuds. That one I feel like goes one step further.
It does. And I really like putting these two together and next to each other because I feel like there's a sense of honesty and a sense
Yes.
of realism in both of these matches.
I feel like the Hokuto Kandori match is like this is the end. This is what we've come to. Where Money in the Bank this is the beginning.
it's the beginning of something incredible.
Because these two feud for 2 more years.
Yeah. Well, I think we can look at it retrospectively that way, but in the moment, knowing that CM Punk contract ends, it felt like an end,
Yes.
right? So it's fun to put yourself in, give yourself 2011 eyes and then watch it again now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because it's fascinating.
Because I was legitimately convinced that he was gone. I'm like, I can't believe they let him do that. Ha, ha, ha. And then 2 weeks later, oh, he's back.
So
It would have been better if it was 2 months, but still.
I find a lot of times with these, when we're trying to find a spot to actually land on, what helps me the most is rewatchability.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that I would watch this Money in the Bank match before I would rewatch Joe and Punk.
Yeah,
But I would probably watch Hokuto and Kandori before I would watch Money in the Bank.
I agree.
So number 12, okay, Spencer, you've done
Yes.
it again.
As I said earlier, I agree to your terms.
Okay, there it is. Season 3 starts with the 12th greatest wrestling match of all time from Chicago, Illinois, John Cena versus CM Punk for the WWE title. Boys, we're back at it.
The boys are back in town.
We are back in town, and I feel really good about this start.
It ain't bad.
Yeah, it's not so bad.
No, not at all.
Anyone that's got any new match suggestions for us for Season 3, you can definitely reach us on Twitter at LastMatchCast, Facebook the same way. If you want to email us, you can definitely do that. We'd love to hear your feedback. That's at lastmatchstanding@gmail.com. Hit us up. Let us know what you're liking, what you'd like to see more of on the list, and get ready to vote on some Twitter polls for Season 3. And, for just $1 a month, you can get an extra vote on Patreon. So that's super important because let me tell you, Landon, Paul, and I have been talking a lot about it, and we've got some really, really awesome match options for you
There's
guys.
some great
coming up.
options. We have some interesting new content coming down the pike, so keep an eye out for that. And I just want to say, as always, if you want to reach out to us, as I said, email or on Twitter, if you want to pick fights, that's cool too. Just whatever. We love the feedback. So keep listening. We'll keep making them.
Yeah, absolutely. Until episode 42, I'm Spencer,
I'm Paul.
I'm Landon.
and this is Last Match Standing.